The use of drones in many areas of agriculture is becoming more and more prevalent, and in ranching, it's no different.
Man, there's a lot of ways to integrate this in the ranch work and to simplify some tasks, to make some tasks easier. And now I've found it as a pretty indispensable tool.
Dallas Mountain joins me as he and I discuss our use of drones in our ranching businesses and some helpful tips for your consideration. Then later in the program, DTN Livestock Market Analyst Shayle Stewart steps in as we talk about this hot calf market taking shape for 2022.
I don't care what region you were looking at. I don't care what weight bracket you were looking at. There was significant, stellar demand for feeder cattle and calves throughout the countryside.
It's all here on this episode of the Working Ranch Radio Show. And welcome back again. It's another episode of the Working Ranch Radio Show. I'm your host, Justin Mills, and we're glad to have you joining us on our program today. If you've chosen to download it on your podcast provider, thanks for doing that. If you're listening here on the radio, we thank you for tuning in. Now, I'm going to start today first by saying if you are a regular listener, then you're going to say, what's up? I thought we were going to be talking about something else today. Well, you're right, because we were supposed to be talking about how utilizing long-term forecasts can help with stocking decisions. However, one of the guests came down with COVID, and so we're going to postpone that a week and hope to bring that to you next week. Now, for today's show, if you were listening in the opening, you hear Dallas Mount will be joining me as he and I will be discussing our use of drones in our ranching businesses and some tips that we think might be helpful if it's something that you may be considering. So that will be what we'll be talking about in a couple segments. Also joining us will be Shayle Stewart. She joined us a few weeks ago to give us an insight on the cattle markets. We're going to be talking about this hot calf market. Shayle is a DTN Livestock Market Analyst and also host of Cattle Market News on Facebook. If you want to search that, you can find her daily. I think she does that about every day, that she gives an update on the cattle markets out there. Very useful as she studies that, and she's going to be sharing with us some of the information that she's pulled out of the recent video sales that we've seen in the market already. And then, of course, the very last part of our program, as we do each and every week, meteorologist Don Day will be joining us with a look at our long-term weather. Right now, a thank you to our sponsors of the Working Ranch Radio Show, Gelbvieh and Balancer, the smart, reliable, and profitable choice. For more information, go to their website at gelbvieh.org. And Zoetis, it's the little things that could derail progress, but your herd can be covered. Visit getlessparasites.com for solutions from Zoetis. Right now, let's check in with the captain, Tim O'Byrne, publisher and editor of Working Ranch Magazine, for this week's edition of Tim's 2 Cents.
Hey, Justin. Hey, everybody out there in Working Ranch Radio Land. So a lot of folks know that every Friday morning I post on our Working Ranch Facebook page. It's Friday. What's everybody doing out there in cow country? And I usually get a couple of hundred people comment back with video, excellent photographs. It's just a snapshot of what everybody's doing one day a week out there in cow country in North America. I love it. It's a great place to share information and learn as well. So in this case, last week, I got a comment from Grard Coffee. He's in Kentucky, grazing some Johnson grass, and a beautiful photo of his nice black cows out there in this excellent looking green pasture. And so myself being from the Pacific Northwest Mountains and the Great Basin Desert Country, I don't know what Johnson grass is. So I had to ask him, wow, that looks real good. Is it good grass? And Gard comes back. So actually Johnson grass is considered a noxious weed in the state of Kentucky. It is highly invasive into our cool season grass hayfields. That being said, we have it, and it is nearly impossible to eradicate. So by grazing it, that's one management tool we use to try to keep it under control as much as possible. It makes a really good feed, and cows love it. The only problems you can face with grazing it is nitrate poisoning and prussic acid poisoning, as you would have with other sorghum, Sudan type grasses. Thanks so much for that, Grard, for sharing that with us. A lot of us learned so much off of this Friday Facebook post thing that we got going on. It's been going for about, I don't know, maybe 6, 7, 8 years now. And if you put all these posts together, you'd have one heck of a learning book. So thank you very much, Justin. Back to you.
All right, Captain, thanks for that. And yeah, that is a fun thing to do, folks. Check it out, the Working Ranch Magazine's Facebook page. I have always found it interesting just to see that snapshot in time of what everybody's doing across the ranching world as they respond to Tim's usually kind of quirky comments that he has to get everybody provoked to make a comment or to share a picture with us. So check it out, Working Ranch Magazine's Facebook page, each and every Friday morning when Tim kicks that out. Be sure to respond yourself so we can see what you're doing on your ranching operation. Well, stay with us. Coming up next, we're going to be talking drones. Later in the program, we're going to be talking calf markets, and then at the very end, we'll be talking weather. We're going to get it all on today's show of the Working Ranch Radio Show. For commercial cow-calf producers, crossbreeding with Gelbvieh Balancer is the smart, reliable, and profitable choice. Gelbvieh Balancer females offer maternal superiority through increased fertility, greater longevity, and more pounds of calf weaned per cow exposed. In the feed yard, Balancer cattle can offer increased performance, improved feed efficiency, and have excellent carcass merit. Balancers add the pounds, make the grade, and deliver the value. Gelbvieh Balancer, the smart, reliable, and profitable choice. For more information, go to gelbvieh.org. And welcome back to the Working Ranch Radio Show. I'm Justin Mills as we head into kind of our main topic here for this episode, realizing we do have another segment coming up here in just a moment where Shayle Stewart will be joining us. We'll be taking a look at what our markets are doing on these calf and yearling markets. But joining me now is Mr. Dallas Mount. We've had him on our show before. He's the CEO of Ranch Management Consultants out of Wheatland, Wyoming. And Dallas, thanks for joining us here on our program today.
You bet, Justin. Thanks for inviting me. Always fun to be on.
Well, we're going to be talking not necessarily what you talk about on a daily basis with ranch management advice and consultation and helpful tips, but we are going to be talking something that is important and that is relevant, and that is ways that we can help cut some costs or be a little bit more efficient than we are out there. And I'm just telling, if you're a diehard horse outfit right now, bear with us just a little bit, right, Dallas? What do you think?
Yeah, if you've got your Super Cowboy Merit badge, you might want to hide. You might want to hide that for a minute,
because we're going to be talking about drones today. And I'm just going to tell you, my own operation, we do a lot on horseback. We still do a lot on horseback, but I have owned a drone for 4 or 5 years now, and I know, Dallas, that's part of the reason I wanted to visit with you, because I know you also have a drone. You've used it in your ranching operation as well. And so, I guess first of all, what was the reason that you decided, hey, this is something that I should be looking at to utilize on my ranch operation? What was that?
Well, I guess I'll show you my nerd card here a little bit. I've always kind of enjoyed aviation. I've had RC planes for quite a while, and so I was kind of predisposed, I guess, to being interested in drones. So when they started to come out, I was watching. I was also doing some video work, right? And I thought, well, this could be handy for that. So I probably bought it for other reasons than the ranch work. But then when I had it, I found, holy man, there's a lot of ways to integrate this in the ranch work and to simplify some tasks, to make some tasks easier. And now I've found it as a pretty indispensable tool. In fact, when we've got a place where we graze about 40 miles west of Wheatland, and when I head up there, the drone is always with me. Yeah.
And that has been something, I guess, when I first got one, I had another purpose in mind. I was going to use it mainly to check for water tanks and maybe fly some cricks. We were in a drought year the year before, and some of the cricks were kind of soggy, and so you just want to make sure cattle weren't in them, and it was just an easy way to fly those. And so that was my intent and purpose. And then it grew into utilizing it for a lot of different elements, down to even moving livestock with it. So for what you have found it to be useful, when you say it's part of the tool that you take when you go out to do things, let's go through some of the tasks just in general that you use it for.
Yeah. Okay, so probably the most common use is checking water. So, in the old way, right, jump on the four-wheeler to the side-by-side and bounce out through the pasture for a while to go make sure there's water in the tank, right? Make sure they hadn't, kicked the float off or knocked the drain valve out, right, or something like that. So now it's easy to just walk outside, launch the drone, fly it over the tank, right, come right down into the tank, make sure there's water in there, right? You can get a good look to see if the cattle are in, right? So we've got two different grazing operations. So what I'm talking about where I do this is just outside my house, right? So where it would normally be a 10-minute trip on the four-wheeler to go out and do that. If I've got other things going on, it's nice to just pop the drone out, zip right over there, look at the water. Yep, we're good, right? Come back, check that off the list. So that's one of the common ways. When we go up to the ranch, the place 40 miles west of Wheatland is pretty rough country. Mm-hmm. And, that's a real nice thing to just go and check where the cattle are. Finding bulls, right? That's a handy thing for that. Where might those bulls have gone, and you can go fly over there. Checking springs, right? So there might be a typical day up there would be a couple hours riding around, looking at the water points, right? And mm-hmm. just trying to find the cattle and those things. So the drone really helps with that. On the gather days, makes that a lot simpler, right? Instead of sending guys to check this draw and to check this draw, right? We can just go fly it and then know where the cattle are and then make our game plan from there. Yeah. So what about you, Justin? How do you use yours mostly?
Well, and very similar to the same thing. In fact, just this morning and the last couple of days, we've been moving two different sets of cows into some new paddocks, and about 300 cows in each set. And so that's really the idea, is to get out and check, it's been really hot too. We've had some really hot weather up here, and so we're checking water, continually always checking water and making sure, because we can tell whether or not the overflows are flowing over or if we're out of water on a tank and what we need to do. So, that, and then in the process of moving these cattle to a new paddock, once we open the gate, there's usually a few stragglers that decide that they're going to hold off just a little bit and maybe not get through that gate, so we'll just push them on through. And I guess from a cattle movement standpoint, that was one of the things I did not buy it for that purpose. It wasn't really the intended purpose, but was pleasantly surprised at how well I felt cattle moved with the pressure of a drone. I try to be a really good steward of or learner and applier of low stress cattle management type techniques. And so, in any way that you decide to move cattle, there's principles or practices you can put in place. And I've tried to utilize that with the drone, and you can see it from the air. That's one of the things that's really fun about the drone, is that you can do some of these pressure points on cattle or moving cattle, and then you can get up in the air and you can see that what you just did, how it's affecting cattle all up and down that line as you're moving them. And so the ability to move livestock with it has been something that really was something that was not an intended purpose, but it's been really helpful. And like you said too, we've got 1,800 acre pasture here that we're going to gather, and it is rough. And what used to take us maybe 3/4 of the day with 4 or 5 riders to gather this pasture, I can get the cattle started with the drone, spend an hour, maybe an hour and a half at the most, getting cattle started and pushed and going in the right direction across the creek, and then pick them up on the other side of the creek with a couple horseback riders, and we can be done in half a day. And it's crazy how well it works. And I like the pressure that it puts on the livestock in such a way that I don't feel like I can keep pairs paired up without losing that, and keep them cattle in a good frame of mind. That's probably what's been really surprising for me.
So something I learned early and you probably know this better than I did, but so I kind of spoiled the cattle that I was running to the drone early, and they got to where they didn't see it as a pressure deal, right? So I don't have much success now with the cattle I'm running moving the drone, and I think it was my own fault, right? I think I messed them up on it too early, but I had a neighbor's cattle that were unfamiliar with it, and I played with it, right? And kind of doing the things you're talking about, and I was really paying more attention to when the animals were responding, right? And then releasing that pressure and then coming back in and then releasing that pressure when they gave me movement, and they moved very well to it, right? So I think if somebody's going to start doing this, don't make the mistake I did early with some of these cattle that I've got, and I kind of spoiled them to it, right? So I can fly the thing probably 4 feet from the face of a cow, right? And she'll just flick her ear at me, right? Yeah. So I can read her ear tag, but I wouldn't have much success getting her to move from the drone, right? Because she's not like, oh, that's what that is, right?
Yeah. So. Dallas Mountain is my guest today, CEO for Ranch Management Consultants, as we are talking about drones, mainly from the broad overview concept of, is this a tool that could be utilized on your operation that might speed up some things or cut some labor costs or cut some equipment maintenance costs, all of that to be considered in this. We're going to continue, and when we come back, we're going to get into the details of what kind of drone he's using, what kind of drone I'm using, some insurance that you can put on these as well, and some other topics that we're going to talk about, all encompassing as we talk about drones and how they can be utilized in a ranching operation. Stay with us. We'll come back with more on the Working Ranch Radio Show. Living in the country means working in the country, and that calls for a tough tractor. Well, Bobcat has 15 models in its compact tractor lineup from 21 to 58 horsepower. With the help of your local Bobcat dealer, you'll find a perfect match for your property and to-do list. Get a look at all the different models at bobcat.com, and while you're there, use the Build and Quote tool to design your ideal machine. Get yourself one tough tractor from one tough animal. Bobcat. Visit bobcat.com. And welcome back to the Working Ranch Radio Show. I'm Justin Mills. My guest today is Dallas Mountain, CEO for Ranch Management Consultants, and we are talking drones. And one of the things before we went to the break, I was trying to remember something, and I was telling Dallas during the break here. I said, "Man, I just kind of had kind of a brain lapse there for a minute." I remember what it was now, Dallas, and that was this: is that some people say, "Oh, this new tech cowboy kind of a thing." And one of the things that I have seen since we've got the drone, what piece of equipment sits the most? Take a wild guess.
I don't know. Maybe a vehicle that you would normally be using to go out there and do this, or what?
Yeah, you know what sits the most, and we do it, like I said earlier, we do a lot on horseback, but what probably sits the most is the four-wheeler. Just because I don't really need it. We'll use the drone. We'll use that in conjunction with having guys on horseback, or I'll do something initially with a drone to get cattle started movement. Because if you're a student of low stress management, you know that starting cattle movement is as important, is really one of the most important things in the process. So we might go and if we got an 1,800 acre pasture and we'll check the corners and get cattle moving, and then we'll pick up on horseback. I'll park the drone and we'll pick up on horseback and we'll do that. So that's probably what I've seen the most not being utilized as much is ATVs or motorcycles, or we don't even own side by side, so I can't even say that. But so I think that may surprise some folks. Okay, Dallas, let's get into specifics, because we need to, if we're going to do this, we really need to talk about, okay, what are you using? What am I using? And so I'll start with you. What kind of drone are you using?
So mine's a bit old. I'm sure there's some new stuff out there. DJI Mavic.
Okay.
And that was the original Mavic model. And what I was attracted to about it is it folds up into a fairly small form.
Yeah. And
you can get cases for them that are made for them, right? And so I can strap it right on the front of the four-wheeler when we're taking off, and it's pretty dang simple to carry. They make some backpacks for them that a person could slide in there. So that's the one I went with. If I had to do it today, I'd probably get something with maybe a zoom on the camera to see some things with a bit more detail. But I've largely been happy with it. I've probably got it going on 4 years now and haven't had to replace a single part on it. So I'm doing all right. So
have you ever had it crash?
I have not. And I'm surprised about that, because I typically crash stuff. Right? So now that you've asked me this, right, next week I'm going to go out there and crash the darn thing. So
and we'll talk about that in just a minute. The crash element, that people are scared to death of. So really quick, how much was at that time? Again, that was 4 years ago. How much was your package, and what did it include?
I think for some reason I'm remembering somewhere around $1,200.
Okay.
It's got 3 batteries for it, a carrying case. It came with extra props. So kind of like a starter package that I got with it. So yeah. Okay. What about you, Justin? What are you running?
Well, so I started in the drones 4 or so years ago too, and I purchased the Phantom 4 Pro V2, and at the time that was kind of the biggest, actually I think it was just ahead of the Mavic, what you have there. The Mavics were a little bit just one generation later. So I had the Phantom 4 Pro V2, and so it's a bigger unit than the Mavics. It doesn't fold, doesn't collapse, which is one of the disadvantages against the Phantom 4. The advantage, and the part of the reason that I went that way, and in fact I called a guy up in Bozeman, Montana that had a drone business. That's what they do. His folks are Red Angus breeders up in Montana, fishers up in Montana. And so I called him because I knew he had a lot of experience. And I said, okay, here's what I'm going to be dealing with. And so I went with the Phantom 4 because it's a little heavier, and I felt it would stand up to wind a little bit better. I kind of have, we're not real windy here, but we have a lot of different weather conditions. And so I just wanted to have that ability. So that's what I went with. It doesn't collapse like the Mavics do, but it's a little bit more of a substantial unit in terms of weight, a little heavier. People always ask, well, how far do these things fly? At that point in time, the Phantom and probably yours, they're around to they'll go up to 4 miles away from you. Now, keep in mind that is under perfect conditions, like you're in absolutely flat country and everything's good. And here's the other thing: if you go 4 miles out, it's going to take half your battery to get there and half your battery to get back. So I don't usually fly at 4 miles. Is that kind of where's your radius of flying that you're at mostly?
I'd say 90% of it is within a mile from where I'm working. It, when we're like, if we have a hill between where I'm working and where the drone is working, that'll start to deteriorate the way things work. Right. So it's if I was on top of that hill flying it away from me, I'd probably feel more comfortable going farther. But most of my stuff is, hey, I just want to pop over this ridge and see what's over there, or fly this valley, right, and see what's in there. So usually it's within a mile and a half.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, and that's kind of what I find. A lot of my working space is at the most maybe 10,000 feet. Most cases it's usually less than that. And so the Phantom 4 was what I went with. And of course now, that's been 4 or 5 years ago. Now we've got a lot more. DJI seems to make the drones that are a little bit more accessible and easier to get to as far as buying them. And I know the other day I talked to the same gentleman that I had talked to before to see, okay, what would you recommend today for somebody? Because what I was finding is I bought my package. It was about $1,800 through Amazon, and it was the same thing. It included 3 batteries, a charger, a backpack, the drone, some extra propellers and things like that. So same thing. It was about $1,800. It's hard to find that same package today. So what I was asking, what's out there? And funny thing is what you mentioned, and this is something I hear from a lot of different people that already have drones. One feature they wish it had is the same thing you mentioned, which was what?
The zoom.
Yeah. Exactly. And so in talking with him, it sounded like the Mavic Air 2 or Air 2S, and you might want to research these, did have that capability to have a zoom feature. And he also made that same comment that was something that he continued to hear as well, that if we could improve one thing, let's be able to have that zoom feature so we can zoom in on a tank, or we can zoom in on something without having to move that drone. And that was a big feature that he felt was important too.
Yep, I would agree. Yeah. So, no, but have you crashed yours? You asked me that.
Well, I have many times. I've probably went through 7, 8, 9 drones that I've went through. And so if you're listening, you're probably thinking, oh my word, how can you afford $1,800 7 times? Well, I can't. But here's the thing about these packages, and I don't know, you probably got it with yours initially, and I advise anybody that I say, okay, here, that's going to get a drone, DJI sells an insurance package on these units. Pretty minimal. I think the cost is around $129 or $150 initially. And then if you do end up crashing the drone, I think it's $100 premium and they'll send you a brand new drone is what they'll do. And so that is your insurance package that gives you a little bit more confidence to fly these things without being so scared to death that, holy crap, I've got, $1,500-$1,800 worth of stuff up in the air. And so that's what I've really advised people to do. Now, coincidentally, what I've also noticed with that is that anytime that I've had an issue or a drone, and there's a few of those wrecks that I've had that it wasn't me. It wasn't like I flew it into a tree or a power line or anything like that. What it was, it just something happened and it kind of fell out of the sky. And so in those particular cases, I was able to upload the data, the flight data information, and they replaced that drone 100%. I paid nothing for that. And that has been probably, I think I've only had to pay the premium 2 times. So most of the replacements that I've had have been issues with that they've seen as a malfunction with the unit and have totally 100% covered. So that, I feel for folks that if you're considering this, you really don't need to be scared about it.
Yeah. I appreciate that. I've had mine out there, and then like my screen goes blank, right? And I lost it. And then you wait a few minutes and you hear it flying back, right? Yeah. And it comes home. So I have yet to have one go blank and for it to just, drop out of the sky. So, well, that's good to know. I do think there's some, when you get the thing right, it's tempting to just, let's jump it out of the box, charge it up, run outside and go fly it and chase cattle. Right.
Yeah.
And I think there's probably some wisdom in, this is just like any other tool. We need to take some time and let somebody learn how to run this. Yeah, right. There's a lot of protections in them and a lot of things that kind of help make it so you don't need a lot of skill to run them. But at the same time, I think just be real when you're getting it right. This is something that's somebody on your team probably needs to kind of have the star beside their name for running it.
Right. No, I agree. I would definitely agree there. And I think it's something that, as you said, rather than purchasing it with the idea that, we're just going to move cattle with it all. I think you really need to focus on projects or jobs you can do with it that are really not related to the livestock, other than, go check water, go check to see if a gate's closed, or maybe your portable, check your fence or some things like that. Do some simple things with it that way. And then as you get better with it, then you might look at moving livestock. But here's the caveat I'm going to say about that. And I don't care whether you're moving livestock on foot or if you're on using horseback or whether you're using ATV of some sort. If you don't have some principles of cattle, of how to work livestock to keep them in the great frame of mind, you can do as much damage with a horse, a four-wheeler, as you can with the drone. It's just, they're just tools that can allow you to make a bad decision quicker, is all that they're going to do. So I go back to, you need to be a student of handling livestock first, and then how can I implement this tool to do those principles? Yep.
I agree with that. So what other kind of uses have you found with it besides the things we've talked about? I'm looking at that picture behind you, and some of those kind of, I've found sometimes where I really enjoy getting some cool shots, right? Or like a video that I can send to the cattle owner and just like, hey, here's what the animals look like, right? What other ways have you found to use it?
Similar to that, I do have a lot of cattle in here that are not my cattle. So if I can take pictures of, here's your first calf, or here, here's some things like that, that's useful. The other thing too is to know what your pastures look like. We talk a lot about if you're really monitoring your pastures and you're sitting in your pickup cab and looking horizontally across that, it might look like you got all the grass in the world. You get above it and you can look down on it, it's going to have a totally different look. And so I can monitor these pastures a little bit to look from that perspective and say, okay, that grass is yellowing and we need to be looking at moving these cattle, or just there's some of those kinds of things that I think are very helpful as well.
Yep, I would agree. If you're flying a piece, maybe there's some leafy spurge or some thistle or something coming out, right? Just hit record on your video, right? Come back in there next year, 2 years later. Hey, hit that same record, get back to the house and say, is this patch growing or shrinking?
Yeah. So, well, Dallas, have we covered everything that you can think of as far as, because I know you probably get a lot of questions and people say, you have a drone. Have we answered those questions, you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think we've hit on some of the highlights. Just like any other tool on the ranch, right? There's going to be good uses for it, and then there's going to be, right? So does everybody that's running a few cows need a drone? Probably not. No. Right? Is it the right fit for some people to maybe say, hey, are there some jobs we can simplify, some miles we can save on a vehicle? Maybe a few days a year that this thing is really going to save some significant workload. And I think for a lot of people in the ranching business, they'd find that to be the case. Yeah. Right? So I'd encourage people to look into it.
Yeah, you're right. I think you nailed it there. And I think that's a good stopping point right there. Just, look at it, consider it. It's not the solve all for everybody. It may not be the tool for everybody, but it is out there. It might be something you want to consider. So Dallas, thanks for joining us. Real quick, your schedule, kind of this summer, you don't have as much schools going on. Ranching for Profit is the schools that you have. Not too busy through the summer. You probably have some EL meetings to get to, but then you kind of pick up again in the fall.
Right. We're getting ready to go to Kennewick, Washington, early September. So that's our next one on the docket. And then we start with our typical school schedules this fall. One exciting new addition is we're coming back to Canada. So we'll be in Alberta in November. So working with the Foothills Forage Association up there to put on that school. And that will be the full 7-day Ranching for Profit schools. First time we've been back in Canada and probably 4 or 5 years, I bet, with the full school. So that's exciting for us. So, but yeah, we're getting things rolling. Oh, one word of caution on the drones. Everybody's got that neighbor, a property rights fanatic, right? Yeah. Don't go fly over his house. He's going to blast it out of the air with a shotgun, I promise.
Okay. Final advice. And, the one final thing I'll say is this is just our conversation. There are some FAA guidelines, and I think you need to be aware of those kinds of things. And we can't have a show like this without you really, if you're going to consider that, please be aware of those kind of guidelines that are out there, and you make your decision on how you want to administer those. So.
Cool. All right. Yeah. Thanks for letting me come on, Justin.
You bet.
Fun to talk to you.
Dallas Mount with Ranch Management Consultants has been my guest here today. We've been having a discussion. Both he and I are drone owners and have been using drones for quite some time. Again, it's a tool that you might want to consider out there. And, one of the tools or things that we talked quite a bit about was monitoring water. Well, there's even newer technology out there now to monitor. If you just want to monitor a water tank and sort, there's some things out there that are very useful. So there's a lot of things out there. The biggest thing is keep an open mind. What are some ways that we can maybe reduce labor, reduce use of equipment, and get things done in a more efficient way? That's really what stems this, and that was really the ultimate reason why I looked at getting into a drone and having a drone in our ranching operation. Just a couple final notes that we talked about the insurance package. One thing I did learn on that, those packages are only good for insurance, are only good for, I believe, 2 years. Now, again, read the fine print on some of this stuff. You can renew those on a drone, but I did have an incident where I had to pay the premium because my insurance package had lapsed and I did not get it renewed. So keep that in mind with that insurance. Very definitely something you want to have on that piece of equipment. One other thing is, how many batteries do you need? Batteries are kind of expensive in these things, and so if I'm going to fly continually, I like to have 4 to 5 batteries, and so that's something to be aware of as well. So just some final comments or thoughts that I had as we wrap up our conversation here today. Well, stay with us. Coming up next, Shayle Stewart, DTN Livestock Market Analyst, will join us as we take a look at what this calf market is doing, as we've already had some pretty good sales that's giving us an indication of what this market's going to look like for 2022. We'll be back on the Working Ranch Radio Show after this.
Covering everything from daily chores to parasite control. The best cattle producers never skip the little things. The weatherproof protection of Dectomax Poron helps control a broad range of internal and external parasites, including the longest duration of activity against the biting louse. Visit GetLessParasites.com for more solutions from Zoetis. Consult your veterinarian for assistance in the diagnosis, treatment, and control of parasitism.
And we welcome you back here to the Working Ranch Radio Show. Justin Mills here, as we are joined now by Shayle Stewart, DTN Livestock Market Analyst. And Shayle, thanks for joining us here on the Working Ranch Radio Show.
Hey, thanks, Justin, I sure appreciate the opportunity to chat with you this morning and really hone into what these feeder cattle prices are doing. I know that's on the forefront of everyone's mind, and man, it's a fun market to talk about right now.
Yeah, it is a fun market, and we do see these prices continue to move higher compared to what we had last year, and that was part of the reason I wanted to bring you in here. This time of the year, there's a lot of calves being sold, yearlings being sold. But there's going to be a lot more to come. And so I know a lot of folks are really thinking about, okay, what does this calf market look like? So let's get into that, because this feeder market, we've had some really good sales on the video sales already this year. And so it's really giving us a lot of indication that this market is really hot.
Yep, you're exactly right, Justin. You've obviously been paying attention to sales because, man, you've got the heartbeat and you've got the vibe of the market completely pegged. And so whether you watched Superior and Western sales last week, or maybe you caught some of Northern sale, I don't care what region you were looking at. I don't care what weight bracket you were looking at. There was significant stellar demand for feeder cattle and calves throughout the countryside. And so, I know a lot of folks are trying to just pinpoint, well, what are my weight group of calves worth? Are they going to be better for this delivery date or that delivery date? And I think if we just talk broadly at the beginning of this conversation, that honestly, the demand for calves, the demand for feeders is just there regardless of where you're at, regardless of what delivery date you're at, and regardless of what weight bracket you're selling in. Obviously, there were, instances of where in some regions, the heavier, more yearling type fashion cattle sold a little bit better just because it's going to be fewer days on feed. But then adversely, in some regions, especially like if we talked about the week in the Rockies sale compared to how the Corn Belt Classic did, and especially in Region 3, which is Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Louisiana, we really saw a lot of interest in those lighter weight calves. And so given the disparity in which we've seen in our beef cow processing over this last year, and just how many cows have been sent to market because of drought or high input costs, and just simply not being able to make the funds in which ranches need to continue to sustain, there is interest for every segment, every weight bracket of calves in every region.
Mm-hmm. In just a little bit, let's come back to pegging some of these prices that we're seeing out there. But I want to talk fundamentally here, because the reason that we're seeing these prices staying strong, and it's an unfortunate situation because we got drought down in Texas, down in the south central part of the country, and those folks, unfortunately, and we hate to see anybody go through this, they're having to sell cattle, and it continues to, just from a very technical standpoint, we are continuing to see a low number in our U.S. beef cattle herd.
Yes, you are so right, Justin. And it's funny that you bring that up, because on Friday we got the beef cattle inventory report. And granted, that was the mid-year report, so that's not as sought after as the report that comes out in January. But still, given how aggressive our beef cow slaughter has been, people just really honed into that data and just, to kind of shake out where the market sits on beef cow processing. To date, we have processed over 2 million head of beef cows here in the United States as of the most recent data, which is actually for the first week in July. Just that data is delayed a little bit. And that is actually 14% more aggressive than what had been processed this year a year ago in 2021. Mm-hmm. And it is 28% more aggressive than the 5-year average. So like you said, as we continue to just grapple with drought, and a lot of the western states have been facing ongoing drought. We're seeing it now more so in the southern states. Some of those northern states have gotten a little bit of relief with scattered showers, but nevertheless, we've just seen constant time and time again over the last 2 years of reason why cow-calf producers are sending cows to town. And like you said, whether it be because of drought or simply not enough year-end margin to continue to sustain, it's really taken a toll on our beef cows. And so as feedlots look at this market, and as packers look at this market, they're saying, you know what, these calves might be a little bit expensive right now, given where we sit with the board, given where we sit where the live cattle market's showing that we're going to turn a profit, come the early spring of next year. They might be a little bit expensive, given especially where corn prices are. But you know what? We know that these calves are only going to get more expensive as time goes on, because the numbers aren't there in the market as they have been in years past.
Yeah.
So we've got to buy, we've got to strategically plan, and we've got to be offensively positioned in this market, because if you're caught playing in the defensive role and just trying to, swing at the balls as they come at you later in the marketplace, it's going to be a costly swing to bat at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's start getting into some of the specifics, and I know you've broken it down by some regions that will be helpful for folks listening. So let's kind of work through some of these that we've seen so far across Superior, Western, and Northern sales so far across the country, and let's pin these down a little bit if we can on what these prices have been so far.
Absolutely. So I'll give you the most recent data from Superior, and we're going to compare that to the Corn Belt Classic, because, Corn Belt Classic came around, prices were extremely hot. But then we had the Week in the Rockies sale, and we saw a still aggressive buying acquisition from buyers. And so let's say what the Week in the Rockies prices were and how that differentiated from the Corn Belt Classic. So let's start out in Region 2. And just for your viewers, so that we're making sure we're giving accurate and concise data, and it's really just malleable for them to understand. Region 2, and this is steer calf prices. So these are steer calf prices in Montana, Wyoming, North and South Dakota, Nebraska, Colorado, and Utah. So for the Superior sale of the Week in the Rockies, your steer calves weighing 500 to 540 pounds sold for an average of $2.15. Your steer calves weighing 550 to about 590 pounds sold for $2.13, and that was about $2.75 more than the previous sale. Your 600 to 635 pound steer calves, they sold for $2.07, and that was about $7 stronger than the previous sale. Your 650 to 690 weight sold for $2.01, that was $2 stronger than the previous sale. And interestingly enough, as we get into these heavier weight steers in the Region 2 of Superior sale, they actually saw a little bit of a price decrease. But your 700 to 740 pound steer calves on Superior sales sold for $1.92, and that was about $16 per hundredweight back than the previous sale. And your 750 to 790 pound steers sold for about $1.94, and that was about $4 off per hundredweight compared to the previous sale. So if we shift gears now and transition into Region 3, that is Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Louisiana, your 550 to 595 weight sold for $1.90, and that was $15 per hundredweight stronger than the previous sale of Superiors. Your 600 to 630 weight sold for $1.88, and get this, that was $20 stronger per hundredweight compared to the previous sale. Really strong demand right there. Your 650 to 685 weight sold for $1.83, $18 stronger than the previous sale. And now, interestingly enough, as we are in Region 3 and we get into those feeders, weighing 700 to 800 pounds, we actually didn't see the ding that this Region 2 feeder saw. So your 700 to 735 pound steer calves in Region 3 sold for $1.78, which were $14 stronger than the previous sale. And your 750 to 790 weights, they sold for $1.77, which was $25 per hundredweight more aggressive than the previous sale. So nevertheless, obviously, regions are going to characterize themselves differently, just simply by numbers, supply, demand. And so nevertheless, we saw some cattle sell higher, some cattle sell lower, but regardless, the tone is strong, the demand is strong. And if you have feeder cattle to sell, it is an extremely exciting market. So the one thing that's been interesting, though, for the 2022 feeder cattle prices compared to that of the 2021 market has obviously been the price spread between steers and heifers. Heifers have been kind of getting beat up a little bit, which is interesting to me and doesn't quite make sense. Just because of our beef cow numbers, you would think that they'd be actually demanding a higher premium, but nevertheless, that's not what we've seen thus far in the market. So
in this market this year, you're saying there's still a lot of pressure on these heifers, even in 22, you're saying?
Yes. So right now we're seeing anywhere from like a 20 to sometimes a 40 per 100. So it's been a pretty big ding on these heifers. And like I said, it doesn't really make sense given that we're down on beef cows. You would think that, honestly, some feeders or backgrounders would just be buying up those heifers and maybe putting them on a really slow ration. That way, maybe they can kick them out as yearlings, get them bred up and sell them as replacements. Or, if they need the numbers in the feedlot, just go ahead and fork the corn to them. So interestingly enough, it is something that kind of begs question, but you know what? The market doesn't always make sense, and that's why we've got to spend a lot of time paying attention to it.
Shayle, I've had guests on the show here. We've talked about some of the program type cattle that can go through these markets, and so as you're looking through these, are you seeing a big advantage to program cattle or the NHTC GAP certified?
You know what? There's always going to be stickouts where, this specific region, this specific feedlot desires these type of cows. Maybe those are NHTC or GAP 4 qualified. what have you. And so there's always going to be those banner sales that everybody just salivates on. But honestly, Justin, you really hit the nail on the head by saying, you know what, this market is strong. And I feel like more so when the market is weak and you know what, there's enough calves to really sort through, that's when you need something to differentiate you. But when the market is as strong as it is right now, no, we're not seeing the big premiums, the big price spreads between those program cattle. And so honestly, I think a lot of folks are just realizing that pounds are selling this year. And so the more the volume in which they have to sell and the weight in which they have to sell is really advocating for them just because corn prices are as high as they are. So nevertheless, I think that a lot of folks have chosen to implant their cattle and have gone that route instead of maybe going in all natural.
You bet. Well, and it's like what we've talked about with other guests. I mean, you really just need to weigh that out, and not saying one is better than the other or against anything, but you just really need to weigh those programs out. Shayle, just quick question, in some of the calves that you covered, these lightweight calves, any demand for these lighter 400 weight calves?
Now, that's very much so going to depend on the region, because this past week, as we are getting into these brutal, scorching temperatures, you can hardly give a lightweight calf that's been unweaned or unvaccinated in, the southern plains or anywhere where it's getting into those scorching 100-degree temperatures. You can hardly give them away because they simply just go to the sale barn. They crash. They don't perform. They get sick. But if you have these lighter weight calves that, have been on a vaccine protocol or, have been long weaned, then yeah, there is good interest, because as you look at the market into 2023, there is nothing but higher, stronger prices. Whether you look at the feeder cattle market and you're going to trade them as yearlings, or you look at the live cattle market and you're looking to jump into, that $1.49, $1.52 range. So nevertheless, yes, there is interest, but it's very regionally driven.
You bet. All right. Well, Shayle, I appreciate you joining us here, giving us an update on the market. I know it's what everybody's thinking about because we're seeing these sales. So I appreciate you giving us an idea where we're at so far, and we'll have to check in with you later down the road.
Hey, appreciate it, Justin. Take care, and I hope these prices stay strong. So thanks again.
Shayle Stewart, DTN Livestock Market Analyst, joining us here to give us an update on where these calf markets are looking like so far with some of the sales we've seen across the country. By the way, if you want to follow along with her on a daily basis, you can go to her Facebook page at Cattle Market News. Well, stay with us. Coming up next, meteorologist Don Day joins us as we take a look at our long-term weather. We'll be back with more on the Working Ranch Radio Show after this. Starting off in the right direction is essential to gaining an advantage later when you go to market your calves. And I have proof that the right direction is with Sim Angus sired calves. A 2020 study by K-State showed that Sim Angus sired steer calves earn more at sale time than all other breed identified sire groups, with at least 50 lots represented on Superior Livestock's 2020 summer sales. The proof's right there. For low-risk, high-potential calves with earning potential, be confident that Sim Genetics will give you more per head, period. Stand strong, Simmental. And we welcome you back here to the Working Ranch Radio Show. I'm Justin Mills, as we're joined now, as we are every week, by meteorologist Don Day with a look at our long-term weather. And Don, we have seen this hot, dry weather across much of the country for seems like a pretty good chunk of July. Now, I know there's been some wet spots here and there and some monsoon moisture that's moved up in and around different areas. But as we approach the end of July and into the first part of August, do you see anything forecasting looking out that shows maybe a change in any weather pattern?
It does look like we may have a little bit of a subtle change coming on up at the end of July and into early August, that while not a dramatic shift from where we are now, enough to maybe make a difference. And this will be especially true for the central United States, which has been the hottest. If you were to look at the temperature anomalies in the last month and a half, the hottest temperatures relative to normal have been from South Dakota south through Texas. So that would include Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, parts of eastern Colorado and Wyoming, and into the Northwest Corn Belt, Northwest Iowa, parts of Minnesota, and into Missouri. We do see the region starting to see maybe high pressure kind of split into two areas. We've had one major high, and it's been really wanting to sit in those states I just mentioned. Yeah. But as we get to the end of the month, and as we get into early August, we're going to see one area of high pressure drift more to the west, into the Great Basin, maybe even towards the West Coast at times, with another area of high pressure developing in the far southeast and eastern areas of the United States. Now, if that happens, that means the center part of the country won't be directly under the hot dome of high pressure so much. That will occasionally let systems come in from the northwest and occasionally bring some frontal systems that'll bring not only temperatures that won't be as hot, but some better chances for showers and thunderstorms. I still think we've got problems in Oklahoma and Texas and parts of Kansas, maybe tapping into that cooler trend, but it's possible that maybe the hottest temperatures of the summer relative to average are occurring now, and maybe not so much in the month of August, and certainly let's hope so.
Yeah, well, and I've heard people say that. I thought, man, if it's hot right now, what's August going to look like? Because typically, we see that time of the year being, well, they call it the dog days of summer just for that reason. So when those highs split like that, where those areas are over, those areas are then going to be looking at probably drier conditions for them. So are we looking at kind of the southwestern part of the country dry, or is that monsoon moisture going to be able to move up in there?
Well, the monsoon moisture is still going to be able to enter the southwestern United States. So we're still looking at being bullish in terms of more rains coming for the desert Southwest, parts of the central and southern Rockies, and even maybe into the deserts of California. Where I do have some concern with dryness showing up is going to be central areas of the Pacific Northwest. So Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Northern California. That is an area where I think the heat and the dryness over the next 2 weeks is going to be the biggest concern, while rains in the central part of the United States start to return next week. For the southeastern parts of the United States, well, they've got a lot of subtropical air to produce thunderstorms even under a high pressure ridge. And, we haven't had much of a tropical season to talk about yet in terms of tropical storms or hurricanes. That'll probably change later this month and into early August. And that tends to be the wild card for the Southeast. So I think that heat and dryness is an area of concern for the Pacific Northwest.
The northern tier of the country along the Canadian border earlier this year was pretty dry. Now, here in the last several weeks, they've actually been able to pick up some moisture. In fact, I know Canada, looking up into there, has seen some significant moisture. Does that trend continue for them with any of the change that you see?
Yeah, no, this is going to be a yes for you to answer your question. Okay. It's really going to be Saskatchewan, Manitoba. I do see those areas having some frequent chances for showers and thunderstorms. We're going to have systems that are going to kind of go around British Columbia, but head southeast across Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and parts of Alberta. So I am bullish that those prairie provinces of Canada have got some pretty decent chances for rain. Now, at times, they're going to taste some of our heat, too. Some of this heat is going to get up into there, but that is one area that I think will do well.
All right. Well, Don, I appreciate you joining us here on the Working Ranch Radio Show with a look at our long-term weather.
Thanks for having me.
Meteorologist Don Day with a look at our long-term weather on our program here today, joining us each and every week as he does. By the way, you can find his daily video podcast. Either go to his website at dayweather.com, or you can find him if you just search on YouTube at Day Weather as well. Well, stay with us. Coming up next, we'll wrap up this week's show, and I'll give you an idea of what we're going to be talking about on our next episode. We've been working on it for the last 3 weeks. We're hoping to bring it to you next week. We'll talk about it when we return on the Working Ranch Radio Show.
Do you have a young child, grandchild, niece, or nephew that loves the weather and wants to learn more? Day Weather has produced a children's weather journal full of weather facts, fun weather experiments, coloring pages, and pages to record weather observations for every season of the year. The weather journal is for ages 3 to 7 and designed to be fun and educational. The interactive weather projects are fun for the whole family to take part in. For only $10, the Day Weather Journal is a great gift idea for any occasion. Click on our Amazon link to order at dayweather.com.
Coming up on next week's episode of the Working Ranch Radio Show, I've only been promising this for the last couple of weeks, but I think it's going to happen, and that is how long-term forecasts can help with stocking decisions. Well, I think this is a big issue, so be sure to join us next week on the Working Ranch Radio Show. Our sponsors today, a thank you to them: Gelbvieh Balancer, the smart, reliable, and profitable choice, and Zoetis. Visit GetLessParasites.com for solutions from Zoetis. The Working Ranch Radio Show is a production of Working Ranch Magazine, branded #1 by America's Ranchers. If you want to know what they're talking about, go to the website at workingranchmag.com and start your subscription here today. If you'd like to get a hold of me, please send me an email at justin.workingranch@gmail.com. Be sure to join us at this same time, same place, or on your favorite podcast provider. I'm Justin Mills, and until next time, keep your chin down and your mind in the middle. So long.